Ma io sono canadese, ma sono anche italiano, ho tutti e due i passaporti, ma sono cresciuto in Canada, sono canadese. Io penso fosse una delle ragioni perché vivo qui a Berlino, perché si può avere queste doppie identità, si può essere come me, parlare un po' italiano e vivere con gente che viene da tutto il mondo. Yeah, die Miete is too hoch, yeah, the rent is too high, and here we have it also in Turkish, which shows you something, as we said before, the community that lives in this neighborhood, which is this mix between the Turkish community that came with the guest worker programs in the 1960s, and these men brought their families, the punk community, and most recently, of course, many immigrants that have come to live in this part of Kreuzberg, many of whom are from Syria and from North Africa. The gay community came here already in the 80s. The 80s, much of the gay community in Berlin was located in the neighborhood of Schöneberg, which is directly to the west of here. We're talking now in the period of former West Berlin. Because it was on the U1 line, a lot of the bars started moving farther to the east. A lot of the cheaper kind of run-down dive bars. Alternative scene really grew in Kreuzberg once the neighborhood became hipper, more central, right? And it went from not just being a place full of dive bars, but also a place where there are a lot more hipster and alternative and bars in this. A really good example is if you look just across here, you see that there's a gay beer garden. And I had a really interesting conversation with the women here, because a lot of the women who are working in this rental protest booth, which is right here, are veiled. They look conservative. They look like they are people who might, I mean, just from a visual stereotype, might be religious and have problems with homosexuality. I sat there, I was talking to 4 women there. I asked them, so what do you think of the fact that directly across is a gay bar, right? This is a gay bar here. This is called Südblock. It's a community center. And the women here, I said, do you have any issue with the lesbian bar across? And they looked at me as if I was crazy, and they said, no, we're in Kotti. In the 80s, these passages you see here became very popular with drug addicts. There's still a small community of drug addicts in this neighborhood, but it's much better than it was in the 80s, where it was really dangerous. Lots of needles on the ground. So what turned it around? If you look at this building today, I mean, take a look at the number of people using it, the amount of commerce, the number of people sitting outside, and so forth. We already talked about Kreuzberg used to be at the edge of West Berlin, and the wall fell, and it became the center. So location, 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 location. Those are the 3 rules of property. The wall falls, and suddenly the value of property changes in a neighborhood like this one. The other thing that completely changed in this neighborhood, aesthetics changed. The aesthetics of the neighborhood. People are starting to ironize or appreciate brutalist architecture. It's a building that kind of appeals to hipsters. Hipsters like being in a space which is a little bit scrubby, a little bit ugly, a little bit relaxing, because you're in a place where things are falling apart. It's industrial, there's graffiti, there's street art. We don't want to be in a polished European capital anymore. Young people want to be in a place where they can feel a little more relaxed, a little more industrial. It feels like Berlin, right? It's the version of Berlin which is sold to people. A lot of people have discovered this neighborhood as kind of hipster central of Berlin. It's a place where people come, and it's become popular with a lot of tourists. Now, tourists who come to Berlin to party, what do they want? They come to Berlin and they party and they want to have a good time. And a lot of people who come to Berlin and want to have a good time think that what they need to have a good time is drugs. And so the drug market has really exploded in the last few years here. Tourism, its demand for drugs, has also changed the level of safety in the neighborhood. A neighborhood that was actually, when I first moved to Berlin about 10 years ago, this neighborhood was really different. It was much more community, much more family, much safer. And you can take a look here at the architecture. It's very much in the modernist style, brutalist, these buildings on stilts with commerce on the ground floor, and up above there are houses. It was a style that was very much in fashion when it was designed in the late 60s, but by the time it opened in 1974, it wasn't fashionable anymore. And this complex is seen as an example among architects of real failed architecture. You have the mix of people who are here. You have Cafe Kotti up above, which is a Turkish-German-owned cafe, but has very clearly on its wall that it's a safe space for transsexuals, right? You have just on the bottom here a gay bar called Möbel Alpha. Across from it you have a group of old men who are sitting there drinking their coffee, playing cards from Eastern Anatolia. And one of them joked, oh, well, we're all men in here, and they're all men in there too, right? So there's a kind of coexistence here. I'm not sure people accept each other entirely, but there is a sense of tolerance here, which is quite remarkable. And I think a real example for Europe in a time where we're thinking, can people of different sexualities, different nationalities, different backgrounds live together successfully? And I think Kotti is an extraordinary example of how this can happen. But an example under threat, as we said, under threat from crime, because of the problems that tourism is bringing with the drug trade, and also under threat for gentrification because of rising rents.